Hello guys, and welcome to TKG Games. In this tutorial we're going to be learning a few things, so let's go ahead and actually talk about the scope of the tutorial so that I don't stray away. So what we're going to be looking into is the input manager. We're going to be implementing for directional movement, and then we're going to be looking at layers. We're going to be using the onCollision stay, enter, and exit functions of the mono class. We're going to be using translate, which is used to add vectors together to simulate movement, and then vector 3s, which are the coordinates that are stored in Unity, okay, which could be points or could be something in space. So let's go into Unity and start coding. So I've gone ahead and actually created another scene inside of the old project that I had. So you have your sample scene and then create a new scene called input manager. Should match the name right here. So what you can do is to create a new scene, go to asset, create, and then create new scene, and then that would highlight in blue. You can give it a name you want. So just name it and then hit enter, and you double click on it, and that will open up a new scene for you. All right, so I'm gonna hit don't save, and now we have a new scene here called name. So I'm gonna go ahead here and just delete this for a second and go back into our input here. And so now it should be clear. So what I did was I'm going to use the old assets that we have and some new textures that I got from online, which I'm going to be using for this tutorial. So what I want to do is we want to go to our wispy sky, go to material, and just drag in and drop in the skybox here. What I want to do next is we want to create floor material. So let's go into 3D objects, go to cube, and we want to create a floor. I'm going to do this 40 by 40, and then I'll just put this at 0.5. All right, so next what I want to do is I'm going to provide you guys with the materials so you guys can download this. We can go on the material and just drag the material and drop it. What it does is it will create the materials here that we can use as well. All right, no, let me use something else. Let me use this one right here, and let me change this to floor. And then what I want to do here is I want to fix this a little bit. So I'm going to the material and see if I could improve this by 3 by 3. Let me try 2. 5. That looks a little bit more decent. All right, so what I want to do next is I want to add in a character. So I'm gonna right click on here, go to 3D objects, and go to capsule. And this capsule, I'm gonna give it, let me reset the position, and I am going to go here and also reset the position. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call this player. All right, so now that we have this here, this 2 here, now let's go ahead, let me make this a 2 and 2 and 2. All right, so it's a little bigger, and let me put it up. Now let me go and see how it looks like. Okay, so what I want to do next is we want to add in physics component here. So it's going to be a rigid body. So now let it drop. There, we're good. And then what I want to do next is we want to freeze the rotation here on the X and the Z here, so it doesn't tumble and fall. Okay, so if we're moving around, it doesn't tumble and fall. And what I want to do is I'm going to drag this here and drop it onto the player capsule, so that looks really nice now. Okay, so what I want to do next is let's go ahead onto the camera and add our smooth follow script that we had earlier. You could just search it here, so it's a smooth follow, and then add that in. I'm gonna drag the player and drop it here. So change this to 20, 30. Let's change the damping to something like 300, and the height damping to 500. Let's see how that looks. So that looks pretty good. All right, so now let's go ahead and create a script that's gonna actually drive our player. All right, So go into our scripts folder, and I'm gonna create a new folder here, and just call it Input Manager. Okay, so now we have that. Go to create and create a new script. We're gonna call this Input Manager Playground. All right, and then let's go ahead and double click on that to open it up. All right, so we have our script now, and we can go ahead and start playing around with it. So we don't need this right now, that's fine. I'll keep this here. So let me go ahead here and actually pull this up. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and we need to section our code by creating regions. So create a region, found region, and I'll put this as private variables. All right, and then we need another one for our public variables. All right, and then we need one more for Unity's. So those are going to be Unity's routines. Functions, and then you're gonna have one for our own routines here. So this is going to be our utils here, utils routines, and under Unity here, under Unity routines, you can go ahead and just paste our code here. And I'm going to change this from start to awake, because like I said before, awake is guaranteed to get called. All right, so now that we have here, you can right click on this and add this to the namespace. Input Manager namespace is going to be another folder, which is fine. All right, so now we have that. Let's go ahead and actually do few things. So what we first need to do is we need to get the player transform. Okay, so we need a private variable. We create a private variable. The reason I want to show you guys how to get transform is because I didn't show you guys in the first tutorial, but you can actually access the transform tools from here. And I'm going to call this player transform. All right. Then I need another variable for the rigid body. So I'm going to say private of rigid body, and I'm going to call this player physics. All right, and then what we're going to need next is a boolean here, and I'm going to call this grounded. Okay, so this is to see if the player is grounded or not. All right. For our public variables, what we need is we need a variable for. So what I'm gonna do is I'm to show you guys how to use attributes. So in attributes, you have this open and close bracket, and then I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a tooltip, and I'm gonna say this is for increasing movement speed. Right. And then this is going to be a float. Float speed. I'm going to make this 1F for now. Alright, so what we need next is we need to add in another one for jump. It's going to be called this jump power. It's going to equal that to 1F as well. Alright, and that is it. Alright, so this, remember, this is an attribute, so we can also add this attribute here. I'm just going to copy this here and paste this here. And I'm going to say this is for increasing jump height. Alright, so now we have that here. Let's go ahead and start initializing some things here. So what we need to do is first we need to get the initialize the transform for the player. So what we need to do is going to say player transform equals to this transform that we're looking at, and then for the physics, do player physics is going to equal to the get component on the actual thing, which is going to be a rigid body, and this part of it is done. Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to get a way to actually put input into our characters to make them actually move, onto our character to make it move. So we can go into our utils here, and what we want to do is we want to create a private method which is going to return a vector 3. All right, so a vector 3 are points that our character is going to be using, which is going to be a position to actually move around. So I'm going to call this direction to move. Okay, and that's fine. So for this part right here, what we need to do is we need to make a local variable called move horizontal. So I'm gonna call this move v, and then I'm gonna put move edge, and this is gonna be input dot get axis, and this is gonna be horizontal. And I'm gonna show you guys how I get this. Okay, how I get the input system, and so that you guys see how that works. So we're gonna do that one. Move vertical is gonna be equals to input dot get axis vertical. All right. So now that we have that, what we want to do next is we want to create a new vector. So I'm going to call it vector here, so vector 3, and I'm going to call this direction, and then that's going to equals to a new vector 3. All right, so what I want to do is I want to pass in move horizontal, and since we're not going to be moving in the height direction, I'm going to make that 0, 0, and then we're going to move vertical here. All right, so now we have that, and then what we'll do next is we need to return the direction to move. All right, so now that we have that, now we can actually move the actual pass this to a function that would actually move the player, right? So now let's create that function. So I'm going to create another private void, and I'm going to call this one move player. All right, so what it's going to take is it's going to take in the transform, all right, because we have the transform for that. I'm going to call this player, and then we need the speed. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to do a float here. I'm going to call this speed. So what I want to do is we want to check first, say if player, right, is not equal to null, meaning that it's actually instantiated, then let's go ahead and actually move the player. So we're going to say player, which is going to be transform dot translate. So translate is used to actually move the player, and then we're going to use the method that we, or the function that we used that we created before. That's going to return the vector 3. We're going to multiply that by the speed variable, and then we're going to multiply that by time dot delta time, and we're going to talk about time dot delta time in another tutorial. Right, so now that once we have that here, we're good to go. So what we can do now is we can just go into our update here, and we can go ahead now and call this here move player. So what we're going to do is we're going to do move player, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pass in underscore player transform and our speed variable. All right, so speed. All right, so now save this and go back to our scene. Now drag this script and drop it on the player. Okay, so now that we have the script in the player here, so we haven't used the physics, that's good. So now let's go ahead and see how that works. So we have this, and you can see that we are moving slowly, and we can always go back to the player script here, look on here, and we can see that our speed right now is set to 1. Let's set this to 4. All right, and then you can see we can move faster. We can go left, right, back, front. But right now we can't really jump, right? We can't jump. So there are little tricks that we can do to actually jump. And if I were to go ahead and just create a function that makes this player jump up, you'll see that when we hit jump, it's gonna keep the player going up and up and up and up, and it's never gonna drop, right? So what we want to do is we want to make it where the player can only jump if it's already touched something, right, the second time. Or if we want to make a double jump, then we can have a counter that checks to see how many times our button was pressed, so that the force that's added is twice as much the distance from the ground, right? But that's something that we can talk about in a later tutorial when we start looking into more sophisticated jumping mechanisms. All right, so what we're gonna do is stop this here and make sure that you actually change the speed here to 4. Right, so now what we want to do is we actually want to jump. So what we need to do first is go into here where it says layer, and then we're going to add a new layer. As you can see right here, because we're using Unity 2018.1, they've added in a post-processing layer already. So what we want to add our own layer here. So what I want to do is on 9 here, we're going to call this ground. All right, so create a layer called ground. We're going to go back to our floor here and go under the layer and put the changes to ground. All right, so our object can only jump when it's on the ground. All right, so what we're going to do next is let's go into our script again, and what I want to do next is we actually want to jump, right? So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and actually create a function that we can use for jumping. So I'm going to go ahead and do a void, and I'm going to call this jump. Call this jump root. Yeah, I'll just call it jump routines. Doesn't make sense, but it works. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a, let's say underscore physics, right? Dot add false. And then what we want to do is we want to make the false to go upward. So what we're going to use vector3 static method or static property, and that's going to be our up direction, which is going to be in the Y direction. And then we're going to try to make that into I want to make it as much of a realistic jump as possible. So I'm going to say multiply that by jump power, and then we're going to multiply that by the player's mass, because the heavier the player, then the less height the more power it needs to jump up. So I'm just going to multiply that by the mass here, which we can get under our physics property. Okay, so next what I want to do is I actually want to press the key, I want to press the space key to actually jump, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and actually create another private method here, and I'm going to call this I'm just call it input jump pressed. Sometimes I don't know how I come up with this, but I mean it works. And what I want to do, I'm going to say if input dot get axis, and that's going to be jump, and I think this returns a boolean. I'm going to say that's greater than 0, and we're going to use our ground variable, and it's grounded. Then let's go ahead and actually jump. So I'm going to do is called jump jump routine. Okay, but let me show you what happens if we're just able to jump and we don't care about it being grounded, right? So let's say for example that we press this and we didn't care about it being grounded. So let's go ahead and take this off for now. All right, so let's go into our update here, and let's put our method here, input jump pressed. Save this and go back into Unity. All right, so now let's go ahead and actually play this for a second, and you guys can see when I hit jump. You know what, let's go into our jump power here and put this to about let's say 50. Okay, So now I'm gonna hit that. You can see that if I hit it multiple times, we just keep going up and up and up, and that's not a realistic jump. And then if I let it go, it's gonna eventually start falling down again, right? And this is not a realistic jump. So what I want to do is want to make it as realistic as possible. And as you can see, it's dropping down. And sometimes it might even go through the ground if we don't have it as, if we don't set this as continuous or dynamic, right? So let's go back and try to fix that. So what I want to do is we want to use our variable to make sure that it checks to see if it's grounded first and that it's on the actual floor layer, right? So what I want to do is we want to use our onCollision and onEnter and all that stuff to actually check that. So let's go back into our code here and let's add this and underscore grounded, right? So if it's grounded, then we can go ahead and jump, right? So what we want to do is let's see. So let's go into our Unity section here, and let's add in onCollision. So let's go onCollision, enter, and then we're gonna do private onCollision stay, and then we need exit and onCollision exit. All right, so what I want to do is I want to use this to actually change our values, okay? So what I want to do is we want to change this grounded state so that it either is true or it's false. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that if the other, which is going to be the collider, the collision dot the collider, and then we're going to access the game object, and then what we'll do, we're going to access the layer. It does equal to the layer mask dot, and then we want to do is we want to say a name to layer, right? So we want to name that layer, and the layer that we want to get is our ground layer, right? So if that is in the ground layer, then what we want to do is we want to put underscore grounded to equal to true. All right, and we want to do the same if it's stay here, and then let's just here we want to set this to false, right? So now we're saying that if it's colliding with another object, right? There's a place colliding with another object and it's the floor and it's part of the ground layer, then let's go ahead and change this to true. And if it's if it's standing right in the layer on top of the object itself, then jumping, we can jump from there. But if it's in the air, then if it's not touching anything, if it's exiting, then let's change that to false, right? So we can't jump again, right? Because this is only gonna jump if it's true, right? So now what we're gonna go is we're gonna go into our awake here, and we're going to into our update, and we're gonna go ahead and actually, yeah, let's actually keep this here. So we're gonna keep this jump press here, right? And that should be good. All right, so let's go back here and let's save all, and let's go back, and here I'm gonna go ahead and change into our character here. I'm gonna go ahead here and change the jump power to about 300 and hit play. Okay, so now you can see I can jump. And if I jump multiple times, I think you can see I can't really jump and go all the way high again. So now let me change this. This is small, so I'll change the jump power to about 600. Okay, and you can see now that it jumps higher, and I'm hitting the jump all the time, but it's more consistent. And if you want to jump forward, see that works. If you want to jump backwards, that works as well. And to the side. All right, and I think this will be it for this tutorial. If you like a tutorial, thumbs up. Let me know, guys, if you guys want me to cover any other things. But like always, I'm trying to keep these tutorials as short as possible. And if you guys want me to break it down to smaller sections, just let me know in the comment section below.
And you guys can look at my other tutorials. I have a Java tutorial, and I also have another tutorial that covers particular problems, so check that as well. Alright guys, this has been a beautiful tutorial. I'll see you guys in the next one. Please like and subscribe. Bye bye.